Welcome back to your Thursday Buckeye Talk. Doug Maurice, Nathan Baird, Stephen Means. I'm back from vacation. I just want to start off by saying, USA, USA. Europe's fine. I like it here. We'll talk about that more on some other podcast. We are back to talk about football because that's what you guys like. And I got back. We pre-recorded a bunch of stuff. So you've heard me, Nathan and Steven have been knocking out all these recruiting pods, these great recruiting pods, as all these recruiting things are happening. But we want to have the three of us talking football again. So we said, hey, what do you want us to talk about? And we got a lot of great responses, and I got them all backlogged. But the main thing that we're talking about here from the 440 was this question. It's a good football question, nice and breezy, but also I think allows us to give some insight. What is the single most dominant aspect of Ohio State's offense? Is it balance across the receivers, accurate quarterbacks, play calling? Is the most dominant aspect also the most important? If its most dominant attribute is balanced wide receiver play, does the team need that in order for this new play calling switch to work out? So this is from the 440, Nathan. We're going to start with you, and all three of us are going to give like our sentence or two description of the most dominant part of the Ohio State offense. I would imagine there will be some overlap. We'll slice it very thinly, but it will allow, I hope, our loyal Buckeye Talk listeners. I missed you guys, man. I missed you. I had a dream about texting people. We're going to do a dream podcast because I had a weird football dream in Europe, but we'll do that later. Nathan, I don't want to be dreaming about football on vacation, but if I stop doing this for any amount of time, my brain doesn't stop working and I don't have the mouth opportunity to let it out to the world. So it's just in my own head. And then I have crazy dreams. Crazy dreams.
Don't you envy the French people who could just ignore you because they didn't understand what you were saying when you just started ranting about whatever in college football for the past 2 weeks?
Yeah. It was, I'm an American. That was my main, I don't want to help it. I am just America. And I kept saying like, I'm American sized. Everything is a little smaller. It's like, I'm American sized. What are we supposed to do? So anyway, Nathan, that's not what we're here to talk about. People talk about football. We want to talk about football. Nathan, what is the most dominant aspect of the Ohio State offense?
So this was a question that you just posed to us maybe like an hour and a half or 2 hours before we start recording. We had a meeting in there. So I was like, man, I don't know. Can I come up with a really good answer? And then like right after I thought that, I was like, oh yeah, I think I know exactly what this answer is. And it's something that it's a term I first used to describe Justin Fields, but I really think it has continued and it's something that was even present there before Justin Fields, and that's explosively efficient quarterback play. I think that's the thing that Ohio State does. You could argue they don't do it better than everybody in the country. There's one entity that I think maybe does it better, and maybe two, and the second one doesn't always get enough credit for it. But they're right there. It's a thing that I think they do the best from an offensive standpoint. The thing that they do most consistently the best from an offensive standpoint, because there are times where we talk about the offensive line maybe had its issues, such as the 2021 Michigan game, or there's times when the running game gets stuck in the mud or has its issues, which has happened spottily here at least over the last few years. And there's never really a time where we feel like the sails just whatever, like the air just completely leaves the quarterback position. But I think it's important to draw the distinction between just being productive quarterback play and being highly efficient while also still having the skills and the talent and the intelligence and everything else that makes this offense still be very dangerous, very explosive, while at the same time as it operating in a really efficient way.
So, Stephen, when you hear that phrase from Nathan, what is it? Efficiently explosive or explosively efficient? Or does it matter, Nathan? Does the order matter?
I don't. Maybe that's another podcast. Maybe if we come to a consensus, we'll move on to a second podcast.
Love where we debate semantic podcasts. What is an adjective? And what does it mean for Ohio State?
I think it's explosively efficient because you want to. Explosive is modifying efficient, and efficient is what this offense is at all times. Efficient is the baseline. Efficient is the identity of the offense, and it's explosiveness on top of that.
What does that phrase mean to you, Stephen?
That was a lot. I'm just trying to wrap my head around that. It's true. I don't know. For the sake of joining in on the semantic argument, I might flip it and go the other way and say efficiently explosive, because that's what you're doing. You're efficiently being explosive. It's the C.J. Stroud having 40 plus touchdowns and only 5 interceptions. It's Justin Fields against Nebraska in 2020 being 19 of 20. And the only incompletion he had is because Chris Olave got flipped on his head. I mean, you can go back to Dwayne Haskins and how he was efficiently, throwing the ball around. It's the expectation for how we expect quarterbacks to be. I don't know if I agree with that's the thing that defines it, but it's definitely on the list of things that you think of with Ohio State when you think about their offense, because that's just, I think we're just it's still new. And Justin Fields and C.J. Stroud and Dwayne Haskins weren't the same type of athlete, but I do think their decision-making in the pocket and how they were used in this Ryan Day offense was very similar in terms of that, I'm going to be flirting with 70% completion percentage. I'm not really going to turn the ball over. And when I have those games with multiple interceptions, you're almost like, ew, why did you do that? Or if you have a 65% completion percentage, you're like, that was a bad game, when it's actually just a normal game. So I don't know how much of that is a product of the talent at quarterback versus a product of the other things that are also a part of this offense that allow that to happen.
Nathan, say your phrase again.
Explosively efficient quarterback play.
Okay, it's a good phrase. And I'm not here to dispute anybody's phrase. I'm not here to tell anybody their phrase is wrong. I'm back from Europe. I'm here to love everyone. We'll see. I think that'll last about 16 minutes. Not even to the first break.
Okay, Tom Allen. We see where that got him loving everybody.
By the way, now that you bring up Tom Allen, when I put out the call on Wednesday afternoon and said, hey, we're back. What do you want to talk about? Like, 3 of us are back together right away. What do you want to talk about? And people did express interest in the opponent previews, which we have done in previous summers, where we break down every opponent on a podcast. We do a post on them. We try to have an opposing beat writer on to talk about that. And I think we're going to do that, but I also might skip Indiana. I might skip who wants us to talk about Indiana again? Do they play Indiana the first game every year? Why is the first game Indiana? I don't want to talk about Tom Allen. And I don't want to have Zach Osterman on and make him talk about Tom Allen for 45 minutes. So I think we're going to skip it. I don't want to.
I will say, just from an ease of production standpoint, having Zach Osterman on to talk about Tom Allen for 45 minutes is very easy, because that means you asked him one question.
I knew you were. It does. I'm not saying I don't want to have Zach Osterman on. I don't want to have anybody on to talk. I love Zach. Zach Osterman's a fine fella.
He's the best.
Great reporter.
He's the best.
I don't want to have a 45-minute Tom Allen conversation. So if we do the opponent thing, we might just skip to Youngstown State, and we can rerun. We can rerun last year's Indiana. And by the way, we're not going to have divisions after this year, so we're not going to have to worry about that. Nathan, why did you put the word quarterback in your sentence? And I think that's a little bit of what Stephen was getting to. You didn't say explosively efficient passing game. You said quarterback play. And I think it's only a 4-word phrase. So we're gonna and really play. I don't know.
You just
That's
say
just kind of
quarterbacks.
a dead word.
Explosively
3
efficient
words
quarterbacks.
really that matter in your sentence. Why did you zero in on quarterbacks?
Well, for 2 reasons. Number one, it preceded this golden era of receiver talent that they have. If you started at 2019 at the latest, but you can really go back to Haskins before that, although he obviously had some good receivers, and into 2017, even when I did some stats back to 2017 when Ryan Day joins the program, because I think that's the interesting era to look at here. So there's that part of it, but then there's also, I think we sometimes, because of the abundance of talent and the abundance of receiver talent, and those guys are obviously legit. I'm not taking anything away from them, but I think we sometimes we can't forget that the precision and the way that these quarterbacks have taken care of the ball within this offense have allowed those receivers to really maximize their own talents here in this program. I went back through, so going 2017 through 2022. So 2 years as the quarterback's coach / co-offensive coordinator, and then as the head coach. Ohio State nationally in quarterback efficiency rating finished among all teams second. This is going backwards. So 2022 would be the most recent year. Second, ninth, fifth, third, and fifth. And if you go by just Power 5 programs, it's second, first, sixth, fourth, third, and fourth. So only one time since Ryan Day has been here has Ohio State finished lower than fourth in quarterback efficiency rating among Power 5 teams. That was the weird 2020 season where they played a much tougher schedule than a lot of even Power 5s did because they had no non-conference games and it was more condensed around just some of the better teams they played and plus 2 playoff games. So that alone, I think, tells you a lot. There aren't programs, again, with very few exceptions, that are that consistently brilliant at quarterback efficiency. It's just every year you can lock it in that Ohio State is going to have an astonishingly high floor of quarterback efficiency. I can keep going on that because I have some other data that I can cite, some other data that I've been looking at. Just real quick, going over that same period of time, go by yards per attempt. And I didn't have a way to comprehensively do all of college football. I tried to go by just the teams that seem to appear at the top.
Don't steal my yards. Don't steal too much of my yards per attempt on the third segment.
Well,
tread lightly here.
Maybe you have better data than I do. I will just say the only teams that I would really count ahead of Ohio State in that are the Lincoln Riley offenses and Alabama. We can talk more about those numbers and specificity when we get to your segment. And then completion percentage, Ohio State has in the past, so they were 12th in 2017 and 13th in 2019 in Justin Fields' first year. And then since then, they've been 5th, 3rd, and technically they dropped to 12th last year. If you take the Tennessee game out, they would have had the same completion percentage as Tennessee. If you take out the Northwestern game, they had the same completion percentage as Tennessee that finished 5th. So it would have been 5th the past 3 years. Just all of those things combined. This offense from the start of a year operates at such a high platform going into every single game that the pressure that puts on opposing defenses is it's why they are so regularly break those opposing defenses, I think, because it's a lot of leverage to have pulling down on you before the game even starts.
So when you have the word quarterback in your phrase, I do think that puts, what's the right word? A little impetus, not pressure exactly, but Steven, the word quarterback, there's only 3 words that matter in Nathan's phrase. And one of the words is quarterback. Mm-hmm. And they're in a quarterback competition. They just lost the number 2 pick in the draft. They've had 3 straight starting quarterbacks be first round picks. That does put a little bit on, okay, there are other things happening here, but there is quite an emphasis, at the very least, on the quarterback. And that Kyle McCord or Devin Brown, maybe both, have a standard to live up to, and a decent chunk of it in this description of the offense would rely on them playing well. Would that, to have it described that way, should that have fans, does that amp up a little bit, what is needed from the starting quarterback in 2023?
Yes. I think whoever your answer was going to be, though, that's the case. Because I don't know if the question was meant to be this way, but part of me took it as, what's awesome? And what needs to be awesome at all times for this offense to be what it is, standardly, when you think about it. And if you're going to say, oh, the quarterback part is the most dominant, that means the quarterback better be dominant at all times, or this team isn't going to be able to accomplish what it's going to accomplish. If you're going to say any of the other things that we might get into on this list, then the moment that drops off, so does your expectation of this offense being championship level, which Nathan's going with quarterback, so let's stick with that subject for now. my pushback on that is one based in the conversation we've already had on the pod of, does this year's quarterback have to be that for this team to be national championship level because of all the other things we're going to talk about? Or can they be just like a game manager? Not necessarily Stetson. Can they be Stetson Bennett of 2022 good and this team still win a national championship? If they're Stetson Bennett 2022 good, even though he was a Heisman Trophy finalist, all that stuff is great, but some of that is because his team was dominant. That's not the dominant aspect of a team. If you're Stetson Bennett 2022 good, it's good, but it's not dominant aspect of a team. It's not the foundation of why all this is possible.
So we're staying with the quarterback word here, Nathan.
Yeah.
And I do want to dig into one other word then before we get off your phrase. In your mind, Nathan, having quarterback in your phrase, what does that mean for how you view the outcome, the importance of this quarterback battle, and the standard that you believe this starting quarterback in 2023 has to play to?
First of all, real quick, just Stetson Bennett, in terms of efficiency, was basically an Ohio State quarterback last year, like 9.1 yards per attempt and a 160 QB
But would
rate,
you say
efficiency.
Would you say that's
rating.
because of him, though? Would you say that's him first? For why those numbers?
It's at least in part
would you say
him.
it's him for? Right, but is it
It's at least in
with
part
him?
him.
Does it start with him though? Because that's kind of my point here. Does it's not right? Do the numbers that make somebody, you called it explosively efficient, does the numbers that make somebody explosively efficient in a college football offense start with the quarterback? If your answer is yes, then okay. But I don't think it has to be.
Well, I guess we can talk about that more in your segment. But just pointing out from a numbers standpoint, he was right there the way that we talk about Ohio State quarterbacks almost.
I cannot sit back any longer. You are baiting me. I have decreed that I shall not appear once again on Buckeye Talk, and yet for no reason at all, you have brought my name into this discussion. And to say that I am a Yankee quarterback, I am an Ohio State quarterback, is perhaps the most gross injustice I have ever heard as it relates to one Stetson Bennett IV. Please rescind that remark, Mr. Baird. I am nothing but a Georgia quarterback.
He was not quite an Ohio. You were not quite an Ohio State quarterback. I did say that you're a step below an Ohio State quarterback, if that's what you're angling for here, which I think is not what you're angling for here. But to answer the fuller question, we have already been talking about the quarterback competition at Ohio State in this context, and the way that we were following it throughout the spring was not what progress they were making, Kyle McCord and Devin Brown were making on a day-to-day basis against each other. That was really the important thing. It was what progress were they making towards Ohio State's standard of quarterback play, which through all the numbers that I just gave you and others we'll probably talk about is astonishingly high. I mean, it's you're a Heisman Trophy finalist. Like that's what, if you're not a Heisman Trophy finalist, something went wrong as the Ohio State quarterback. Even you can have a great season like Justin Fields in 2020 and still not be the level that you're supposed to be at for by that estimation anyway. So that is, I think we've already been talking about this. It's part of why I picked this, because everything we've been talking about in terms of this quarterback competition has been framed around how elite you have to be and how this program depends on these quarterbacks being elite.
Okay, so let's zoom in on one other word then, and it's explosive. Explosively. What does that mean to you, Nathan? Is that deep balls? Is that a certain number of big plays? Is it yards after the catch? When you use that word, what is it? What are you thinking in your head?
Yeah, it's being it's the ability to produce those big plays at kind of any time. And that is there in this offense, even if the underlying performance is that efficiency. It's Ryan Day talks about how they've built it this way for a reason, that they want to be able to attack, horizontally, and they want to be able to attack on the ground, but you also want to be able to attack vertically. And it's the efficiency that which they do the one that allows them to do the other, I think. And you've got to obviously have the receivers that you can to maximize that. But I think what you've seen both C.J. Stroud and Justin Fields in terms of either arm talent or vision or decision making or all of those things, that the quarterback and especially, and then that's where the efficiency comes in too, because every time you turn the ball over, every time you have a real stinker of a game, you give away opportunities to do that. And Ohio State doesn't give away a lot of opportunities. That's why, again, that pressure is just constantly on opposing defenses. Most of the time, maybe the second half of the Michigan game being the exception. It's most of the time opposing defenses are really being leaned on until they break.
Explosively efficient quarterback play. That's Nathan Baird's description of what is most dominant about the Ohio State offense. When we come back, Stephen Means' description next after this.